After my baby was born early, I texted the family group chat. "We're in the NICU. Please pray." Those words left my fingers trembling as I typed them, not because I didn't believe in prayer, but because in that moment, I was stripped of every illusion of control. I was sitting under harsh fluorescent lights in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear, watching my newborn struggle to breathe inside a glass box surrounded by wires and monitors that screamed at the smallest fluctuation. My body was still broken from delivery, my emotions raw from shock, and yet all I could think about was how fragile life suddenly felt. The weight of the beeping machines, the way nurses rushed in and out with hushed urgency, and the feeling of my heart trying to claw out of my chest. It all crashed down at once. I thought my family, the people who always said family is everything, would rally around me. I thought my message would unite them in love, in worry, in support for this tiny life fighting so hard to stay here. But what I didn't know, in that moment, was that my simple plea would set off a chain of events that revealed more about my family than I ever wanted to see. Betrayal doesn't always come in shouts or slamming doors. Sometimes it comes in silence, in the way people choose not to show up when you need them most. And as I stared at my phone screen that night, waiting for replies that didn't come, I realized this story wasn't just about my baby's fight for life. It was about the truth I was about to uncover, about the people who claimed to love us. Sat there in that cold hospital chair, my body aching in ways I didn't even know it could. But none of that compared to the ache in my chest as I stared through the glass at my baby. The NICU is not like the pastel-colored nurseries you see in baby magazines. It's a battlefield. Rows of tiny warriors fighting silent wars inside incubators, each one surrounded by machines and tubes that almost seem bigger than their fragile bodies. The constant hum and beeping is like a metronome of fear, ticking away every second. You're forced to wonder, will my child make it through the night? My little girl's chest rose and fell unevenly, her skin so translucent I could see the blue veins under it, and every fiber of me wanted to tear that glass apart and hold her against my chest, to tell her she wasn't alone. But all I could do was press my hand against the incubator and whisper promises she couldn't hear. And then, like an instinct, I grabbed my phone. I typed that message into the family group chat with shaking hands, my tears falling on the screen. "We're in the NICU, please pray." It wasn't just an update, it was a desperate cry for help, for comfort, for someone to remind me that we weren't facing this nightmare alone. I thought the replies would pour in, that my phone would buzz nonstop with calls, with messages, with love. I thought someone would rush to the hospital, even just to sit in the waiting room so I wouldn't feel so small and helpless. Instead, silence. The screen stayed blank. A few minutes later, one reply popped up. A thumbs-up emoji from my sister-in-law, like I had just said I'd found a good restaurant, not that my baby was fighting for her life. My heart dropped. Then another message. "Keep us posted." From my brother, short and detached, as if I had just mentioned car trouble. No one asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I was scared out of my mind. No one said they were. On their way. No one. The silence became louder than the machines around me. And in that silence, something broke inside me. Not just the illusion of support, but the last thread of hope that maybe my family cared in the way I had always begged myself to believe they did. Little did I know, that cold silence in a hospital waiting room would mark the start of a very different battle, one I hadn't prepared for. A battle not for my baby's life, that was hers to fight, but for my own dignity, my own boundaries, and the truth about the family I thought I could count on. Hours turned into days inside that hospital, each one blurring into the next as I lived by the rhythm of monitors and nurse check-ins. I hardly recognized myself in the mirror anymore, pale, hollow-eyed, with hair matted from being shoved under hospital pillows. But what gutted me most wasn't my reflection. It was the glowing family chat on my phone, each message colder than the last. I posted updates, her oxygen levels improving, then dropping, then stabilizing again. I shared photos, her tiny hand barely big enough to curl around my finger, proof of how hard she was fighting. And what did I get? A heart emoji from my cousin, a hang in there from my aunt. No visits, no late night calls, not one person asking if I'd eaten, if I needed clothes, if I had even stepped outside for air. I had gone through my whole life thinking family meant showing up, no matter what. But as I watched my phone sit there in silence, I realized family was just a word they threw around at barbecues and birthdays, a performance for outsiders. When things got hard, when I was sitting in a hospital begging for someone to hold me up, they vanished. My husband tried to fill the gap, but he was just as broken as I was. I saw the way he leaned over the incubator at night, his shoulders shaking when he thought I was asleep. He wanted his family to be there too, to show up like they always claimed they would. But all we got were empty words sent through glowing screens. On the third night, while I sat in the rocking chair by the NICU window, I saw a family across the hall. Their baby was just as small as mine, but their waiting room overflowed with people. Grandparents bringing hot food, siblings trading shifts so no one was alone, cousins quietly praying in the corner. Their presence filled the space like a blanket of warmth. And I couldn't help but compare. Me, alone with a lukewarm cup of vending machine coffee, scrolling through messages from people who couldn't even be bothered to show up in person. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone against the wall, to ask them how they could call themselves family while leaving me to rot in fear and exhaustion. But instead, I swallowed it, the way I always had, telling myself I shouldn't make things harder, that maybe I was expecting too much. Only this time, deep down, something in me refused to forgive. Because I knew this wasn't just about convenience or timing. This was about truth, about where I stood in their lives. And in that lonely rocking chair with machines buzzing around, me and my baby clinging to life, I finally started to admit what I had spent years avoiding. Maybe my family never really saw me at all. Maybe they only saw what I could give them. And if that was the truth, then this silence was only the beginning of what I was about to uncover. When we were finally allowed a brief moment of skin-to-skin contact, I held my baby against my chest. For the first time, her tiny body trembling against my heartbeat. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered over and over, "I've got you. You're safe. I'm here." That moment should have been sacred, something I'd remember for the rest of my life as a blessing. Instead, a bitterness crept in because I realized I was the only one here to give her that promise. I had begged my family to pray, to care, to show up. But when my phone buzzed again, it wasn't love. It was logistics. My cousin texted, "How long do you think you'll be in the hospital? We're planning a baby shower, but if you're stuck there, maybe we can just do something smaller." I read it twice, certain I misunderstood. My baby was fighting for her life, and all they cared about was whether their party would be smaller. I felt something inside me snap, like a cord that had been stretched too tight for too many years. I didn't reply. My husband saw the message too, and he clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth would crack. "They don't get it," he muttered, pacing the tiny room. "They've never gotten it. They only show up when there are balloons and cameras, when they get to look good in front of people." His words landed heavy because they weren't new. He had warned me before, told me my family thrived on appearances, and left me to carry the weight in private. I hadn't wanted to believe him. I had defended them, excused them, told myself they loved me in their own way. But now, in the harsh light of this hospital, there was no room left for excuses. Every unanswered call, every half-hearted emoji, every shallow remark piled up until I could barely breathe under the weight of it. And then came the worst blow. My brother finally called, not to ask about the baby, not to check on me, but to ask if I could transfer money to his account because his rent was due. I remember staring at the phone in disbelief, my baby's monitor beeping beside me, while his voice droned on about late fees and landlords. That was the moment I knew. They would never put me first. Not me, not my child, not our pain. They only saw me as someone to lean on, even while I was breaking. And as I hung up that call, something hardened in me. I wasn't going to keep begging for scraps of love. I wasn't going to keep waiting for people who had already shown me where their priorities lay. From that day forward, I swore my baby would never grow up thinking love looked like this. And if my family thought I'd keep playing my old role, the caretaker, the ATM, the one who swallowed every slight and smiled anyway, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The NICU days stretched on, but with every hour I grew colder toward the people I once would have bent over backwards to please. I kept sending updates in the group chat out of habit, but they read more like reports than cries for help now. Oxygen. Levels stable today. Doctors increasing feeds tomorrow. Possible discharge date if all goes well. My messages were met with the same flat responses. Good to hear. Keep us updated. A stray praying hands emoji. No offers to visit. No one showing up with coffee. No one even asking if I needed a ride home to shower or sleep in my own bed for an hour. On the 5th night, as I rocked in the chair by her incubator, I realized something terrifying, but also liberating. I didn't feel sad about their absence anymore. I felt clarity. For years, my family had trained me to accept their conditional love, to celebrate their half-efforts, to be grateful for crumbs. But sitting in that sterile room, surrounded by strangers who showed more genuine compassion than my own blood, I finally saw the pattern for what it was. A nurse noticed I hadn't eaten in hours and brought me a sandwich from the staff lounge. A stranger in the waiting room handed me a bottle of water and whispered, "You're not alone." These people who owed me nothing were giving me more than my family ever had. That was when the shift happened inside me. I stopped sending updates to the group chat. I stopped checking my phone, waiting for words that never came. Instead, I poured all my focus into my baby, her slow breaths, her tiny fists, her steady fight to stay alive. And then, when she finally got stronger, when the doctors told us she was ready to go home, I stood in that hospital lobby with her in my arms and realized something else. My family hadn't even asked when we were leaving. Not one person offered to help us settle in. Not one person planned to visit and welcome her home. Their silence had spoken louder than any words. And as I strapped my baby into her car seat for the very first time, my body still weak but my resolve stronger than it had ever been, I made a decision. If my family could vanish when I needed them most, then I could vanish from their lives too. Not in anger, not with screaming or dramatic exits. Just a quiet, final boundary. They had shown me what I meant to them. Now it was my turn to show them what they no longer meant to me. Driving home with my baby in the back seat felt surreal, like I was stepping into a new life with a scar I would carry forever. The neighborhood looked the same. Lawns trimmed, cars parked neatly in driveways. But nothing about me was the same. I had walked into that hospital still clinging to hope that family meant something. I walked out with my child in my arms and a resolve carved out of fire. When we got inside, the house was silent, too silent. No balloons, no flowers, no casserole waiting in the fridge, just the stillness of 4 walls that suddenly felt both lonely and free. My husband carried the diaper bag inside, his face lined with exhaustion, and he looked at me as if asking, "What now?" What now was simple. Survival on our terms. No more waiting for texts that wouldn't come. No more apologizing for being hurt by their neglect. I took my phone, scrolled through the endless chain of half-hearted replies, and archived the whole group chat. Gone. Just like that. The weight lifted instantly, like I had unclenched a fist that had been tight for years. A few hours later, while rocking the baby in the living room, my phone rang. It was my brother again. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, he was calling to check on us. But when I answered, his voice was casual, impatient. "Hey, so Mom said you're home now. Can I swing by tomorrow and pick up some stuff? I've been meaning to borrow your blender." My baby whimpered softly against my chest, and I felt a wave of cold fury rush through me. He hadn't asked about her weight, her breathing, if she was stable. He wanted a blender. A blender. That was the moment the last illusion shattered completely. I ended the call without another word, blocked his number, and sat in the quiet dark with my daughter, her fragile breath sinking with mine. In that silence, I found my answer. They had never really been family. Not the kind that shows up when it matters, not the kind that sacrifices comfort for love. They had shown me who they were, and I believed them now. And as I kissed the soft crown of my baby's head, I whispered the vow that would guide every choice from that moment forward. You will never grow up thinking this is love. You will never beg for scraps of care. I'll give you the family you deserve, even if it's just me and you. And for the first time since the NICU, I felt strong. Not because of them, but in spite of them. The next weeks at home were harder than anything I had ever faced, yet strangely lighter, too. Hard because newborn life meant sleepless nights, bottles lined up on the counter, endless cycles of feeding and crying and praying. She kept breathing evenly in her sleep. But lighter, because the constant sting of waiting for my family to care was gone. I had cut the cord, and with it, their power over me. They still tried in small, pathetic ways. My aunt messaged once, "We'll come see the baby when things calm down. We've just been busy." Busy? I read it once, then deleted it without replying. Busy had become their excuse for years. Too busy to show up at graduations, too busy to help when my car broke down, too busy now to care that my child had barely survived. I wasn't accepting busy anymore. My mother called once too. Her voice was soft, practiced, dripping in the kind of guilt-coated sweetness she used whenever she wanted to smooth things over without ever acknowledging the damage. "We're just giving you space," she said. "You know we care." But I remembered the empty waiting room, the silence after my messages, the blender call. I remembered the way strangers had carried me through while my so-called family stayed home. Space wasn't what they had given me. They had given me abandonment. And I wasn't about to let her rewrite the story. I ended the call with no promises, no openings, just quiet resolve. My husband and I built our own cocoon instead. We found comfort in small things, the soft glow of the nightlight as we rocked our baby together, the way neighbors dropped off meals without asking for anything in return, the steady presence of nurses who checked in even after discharge. We began to realize that family wasn't about bloodlines or last names. It was about showing up. And those who didn't, they had no place in our circle anymore. One evening, as I tucked my daughter into her bassinet, I thought about the years I had wasted trying to earn their love, bending myself into pieces to keep their approval. And I realized they had already answered the question I'd been too afraid to ask. What do I mean to them? The answer was nothing. And that was the gift hidden inside all this pain. I was finally free to stop pretending otherwise. From that night on, I stopped calling them family. They were just people I happened to be related to, and people who leave you to drown don't deserve a seat at your table. By the time my baby was a month old, the calls and messages had slowed to almost nothing, and I didn't miss them. What surprised me most was how peaceful it felt. No more watching my phone light up with hollow words. No more twisting myself into knots, wondering why I wasn't enough to make them care. I poured everything into the life growing inside my home. The long nights, the little milestones. The first time she wrapped her tiny hand around my finger with a grip stronger than it should have been. That grip reminded me daily of what I owed her. Not the broken version of love I'd grown up with, but something whole, honest, safe. Then came the first family gathering since her birth. A cousin sent me an invite to a barbecue, casual and bright, as if nothing had happened. "It'll be nice to see everyone," she wrote, adding a smiley face. I stared at the message, the memory of that first night in the NICU replaying in my mind. The silence, the emojis, the blender call. They wanted me to show up with my baby, like everything was fine, like she hadn't fought for her life while they stayed comfortable at home. My husband asked quietly, "Do you want to go?" I didn't hesitate. "No." He nodded. No argument, just relief that I had finally said it without guilt. That day, while my family gathered in some backyard, clinking drinks and posting photos, I sat on the floor with my daughter, stacking baby clothes into drawers and humming lullabies under my breath. And for once, I didn't feel left out. I felt free. Because the truth was clear now. I didn't need their half-love, their empty gestures, their performative family titles. I had my own family here, breathing, growing, needing me in ways that actually mattered. And the longer I lived in that truth, the stronger it became. By the end of that month, I knew there was no going back. They had chosen to be absent when it counted most. I had chosen to stop forgiving them. And between those two choices, a new life was born. Not just for my daughter, but for me. A few weeks later, the group chat lit up again, this time with photos from another cousin's baby shower. Pink balloons, matching outfits, tables lined with gifts. The same people who hadn't lifted a finger when my daughter was gasping for air in the NICU were now smiling for cameras, celebrating someone else's pregnancy as if it were the most sacred event in the world. I stared at the screen, and for a moment I felt that old sting. The familiar ache of being excluded, of realizing once again that I was only ever family when it suited them. But then my baby stirred in her bassinet, letting out a tiny cry, and I turned my phone face down on the table. No more. I wouldn't keep reopening wounds just to watch them dance around in their version of love. They were addicted to appearances, to being seen as supportive without ever actually showing support. I'd lived under that spell for too long, convincing myself crumbs were meals. Not anymore. The final push came when my mother called again. This time her voice was sharper, almost annoyed. People are starting to ask why you don't come around. It looks bad. You need to make an effort. I felt something rise in me, calm but unshakable. No, I said simply. Silence stretched. On the other end, heavy and offended. What do you mean, no? She asked, her tone dripping with disbelief. I looked at my daughter, her little chest rising and falling, and I knew the answer had been waiting inside me all along. I mean, I'm done, I said. I'm not bringing my child into a family that disappears when she needs them most. If people are asking questions, tell them the truth. Tell them you couldn't be bothered to show up. I hung up before she could spin it into another guilt trip. That night, I rocked my baby in the quiet of our living room. The soft hum of her breathing stronger now, steadier, a miracle I would never take for granted. And I realized something powerful. My family had abandoned me in the worst moment of my life, but in doing so, they had given me something priceless. They had given me clarity. And with that clarity, I was free. Free to build a new life on my own terms, free to break the cycle so my daughter would never confuse neglect for love, free to choose peace over pain. For the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like healing. The months passed, and with each sunrise I felt myself becoming someone new, someone stronger, quieter, but also sharper. The fog of exhaustion lifted slowly as my baby gained weight, her cheeks filling out, her cries turning into coos, her breath steady and sure. Every smile she gave me was proof that we had made it through something most people couldn't even imagine. And yet my so-called family acted as though it had never happened. Their silence became routine. No one asked about her checkups, no one sent a gift or even a handwritten card. The only time my phone buzzed with their names was when they needed something. My brother asking for money again, my mother hinting she wanted me to host Thanksgiving because I'm better at organizing. It was almost laughable. They hadn't shown up when my daughter was in a hospital bed surrounded by wires, but they thought I should roast a turkey for them? That was the moment I realized they hadn't just failed me during the crisis. They had failed me my entire life. The NICU hadn't changed them. It had revealed them. And now I couldn't unsee it. I began setting boundaries in ways they didn't expect. I ignored their messages. I blocked numbers when the guilt trips came too heavy. I stopped attending gatherings, stopped apologizing for my absence, stopped explaining myself. Every no I said was like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't even know I had lost. My husband saw the change too. He told me one night, "You're different, stronger. It's like you finally stopped asking permission to matter." He was right. I had stopped begging for a seat at their table. I was building my own. But then came the day that tested me most. My mother showed up unannounced at my door, arms crossed, voice sharp. "You can't cut us off," she said. "Family is family. You're making a scene. People are talking." I stood there, my baby balanced on my hip, and for the first time in my life I didn't shrink. I didn't soften my words. I looked her in the eye and said, "Family is who shows up, and you didn't." Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like she had been slapped with the truth she had always avoided. She left in a storm of muttered complaints, but I didn't chase her this time. I closed the door and leaned against it, my daughter's, head resting on my shoulder, and I felt the kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. I wasn't the daughter who needed their approval anymore. I was the mother who was going to teach her child what love really looked like. And if that meant drawing a line so deep it split generations apart, then so be it. Because nothing, Not tradition, not guilt, not blood was worth exposing my baby to the same cold emptiness I had endured. They had abandoned me when I needed them most. Now, I was abandoning the illusion of them. And for the first time, I felt free enough to breathe. The final break came quietly, not with slammed doors or screaming matches, but with a simple choice. I stopped answering their calls, stopped responding to the guilt-soaked texts, stopped explaining myself to people who had already told me, through their silence, exactly how much I mattered. Weeks slipped into months, and the distance grew. At first, they tried to pull me back in with half-hearted messages. "We miss you. The baby must be getting so big. We should do a family dinner soon." But when they realized I wouldn't play my part anymore, they turned to whispers, to blaming me for tearing the family apart. I heard it through neighbors, through distant cousins. "She thinks she's better than us now. She's ungrateful. She's dramatic." But the truth was simpler than all of that. I wasn't better. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't dramatic. I was done. Done begging, done bending. Done bleeding myself dry for people who couldn't be bothered to show up when my child's life hung by a thread. My revenge wasn't loud, wasn't spiteful. It was living well without them. It was building a home filled with real love, where my daughter would never wonder if she was too much or not enough, where she would never confuse neglect for care. It was creating a family that wasn't built on bloodlines but on presence, on showing up when it matters most. And slowly, new people stepped into our circle. Friends who sat with me through sleepless nights, neighbors who brought meals without expecting anything back, my husband's relatives who welcomed us without hesitation. Piece by piece, we built something stronger than the broken foundation I had been raised on. One night, rocking my daughter to sleep, I thought back to that first message I had typed through tears in the NICU. "We're in the NICU, please pray." I had meant it as a plea for help, a lifeline tossed into the dark hoping someone would catch it. Instead, it became the line that severed the truth from the lie. That message showed me who they were, and who I no longer had to be. I kissed my daughter's forehead, her soft breath warm against my skin, and I whispered a new vow. "You'll never have to beg for love. Not from me. Not ever." And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't about what my family failed to give me. It was about what I chose to give her. The cycle ended with me. That was the truest revenge of all.